Hey, all. Happy start to the new week. Monday, July 12th. Already July 12th, as old people say. Glad to see you all here today. Doug Pagitt out of Minneapolis. Producer Dan and conversation partner, co-host today out of Fort Wayne, Indiana. No, Fort Wayne, Indiana. Not in Fort Wayne, Indiana.
South Bend.
South Bend, Indiana.
Don't lump me
When
in
did you
with those
move?
Fort Wayners.
when did you? I don't know why y'all said thought Fort Wayne. I've never even been to Fort Wayne. I don't know anything about Fort Wayne, but I hear it's a nice place to vacation in the.
We went through Fort Wayne. We did a stop there on the tour.
Did we? I had a great time in Fort Wayne. Yeah,
Love
that's probably
it.
why.
Absolutely,
That's probably
love
why
Fort
it's
Wayne.
just buried deep in my mind because it's just such wonderful people. Really appreciated all your good care and support. Friends are in Fort Wayne. Hey, if you're watching on the live stream, let us know if you've ever been to Fort Wayne. We'd love to know it. And of course, if you've ever been to South Bend, and if you too tried to see Pete Buttigieg, but he was unavailable to you as mayor or presidential candidate, or now Secretary of Transportation.
Yeah.
Out of probably the most famous Secretary of Transportation, since I guess.
Can you name another Secretary of Transportation? I can't.
Was Mitch McConnell's wife the Secretary of Transportation? Is that what the role she had with Trump? Wasn't
Could be.
Yeah, I may have that. I may have that wrong. But anyway, let us know where you're coming from, wherever it is. We'd love to cheer on your fine city. And it's News Roundup Day today, and Dan, lots of things happening in the news.
Yeah,
including this race to space among the billionaires. Boy, Sir Branson, Richard Branson, who this guy just keeps overachieving. He's an Englishman, so he's knighted, so he gets to be called a Sir. He started investing in going up into space like back in 2004. They launched this company. Now, they're Virgin Galactic, which to me felt like the third group trying to get to space, third billion. Like I never really thought of Branson's as the big one because you hear a lot about Jeff Bezos. Of course, you hear a lot about Elon Musk.
SpaceX. Yeah,
those guys are trying to get up there. But then this little sleeper, been at it probably longer than either Bezos or Musk, gets there first. And so, for whatever that's worth, they got themselves up yesterday, high enough to be weightless. So congratulations on that. And, like they're saying, they're trying to democratize space. They want to make sure everybody who can pay $250,000 for a flight, everybody that can, buy a flight for 3 minutes instead of a house, those are the people that finally need to get to space. It's about time.
Yeah.
So
space for everyone.
They went out. There's room for us all in space. Yeah, I know there's this space tourism thing people are saying is going to become like flight, like flying from place to place. But the difference is rarely does anyone, maybe a young child or maybe an older person at the end of life that hasn't had a chance to fly. Rarely does someone say, oh, I'm on an airplane today because I just want to fly. Maybe that was a thing before. Usually when you're flying on an airplane,
you want to get somewhere.
Yeah. There's a destination involved. On this one, now maybe they'd make it kind of cool if when you're flying, say from Minneapolis to Fort Wayne, you went up really high so you got weightless, and then you came back down. Like that would be cool. I think, but I don't know where this news, all this level of space flight and all this sort of should fit in our minds. But wherever it's going to fit, whatever the legacy of all of this is, I guess I'm not sure if this is the electric car from 2001, which is going to be achieved and then sort of abandoned, or are we really onto something? And I know because the astrophysicist Paul Wallace, co-host on Fridays, will come on and tell us it's all about eventually getting to Mars. But that feels like it's well down the road.
Yeah.
So I don't know what I think of this. But Sir Richard Branson got him and 3 employees up into space, and they got weightless, baby. They were floating around and could see the curvature of the Earth, which to them said, we've accomplished something. We reached weightlessness, so the human body is floating around up there. Their hair was flying, without all the forces of gravity, and there they were. Up in space.
And of course, there's a little bit of a debate, like, did they get high enough into space to be considered space? But I think if you're weightless and you can see the curve of the Earth, like, you made it, bud.
Yeah,
Good job.
good enough. You do wonder why a billionaire that's been at this for 17 years, a lifelong dream, only goes up 50 or 52 miles rather than hitting this, what's referred to apparently by people who study this as the Kármán line, where you're 62 miles up, 100 kilometers, something like that. So you're 62 miles up, and that's the universally accepted period of time when you've moved into this other category of space. Why they came 12 miles short of that, and Jeff Bezos brought this up, right? That like, hey, well, technically, he was first but went lower, so we're going to be the first people to go 53, 54, 55, 56, 62 miles up. So they're going to make a big deal out of that. I don't know why technologically they chose to be at that 50-mile up in the air off the face of the Earth level, and didn't just shoot up that other 12 miles. What is it about that next 12 miles up that made that not possible? I haven't been able to chase that down in the casual reading I've done in these articles or interviews. So I don't know. You're right. People just bring up the fact that some people make a big deal out of this, as we are now, and other people say, oh, come on. It's, once you're up there and you're outside of FAA level of like an airplane, and you're, this is even above where the Concorde used to fly when it would do that supersonic stuff. Like you're weightless, baby. You're seeing the curve of the Earth. That's probably enough. But I just don't know why they didn't finish it out. Like what? Like why not? Why not just top that thing off when you're up there?
Right. And like you were talking with astrophysicist Paul Wallace, I think last week, the difference between going into low Earth orbit like these guys are doing and going to the moon is just like magnitude, orders of magnitude more difficult. Like we haven't even really got close with these private companies to doing what we did in the 60s with the computer that was the size of, our smartphones are smarter than the computers running the lunar lander. So we got a ways to go.
Good point. Yeah, like we're making a very big deal out of this commercial flight, and look what's been accomplished, but it's nothing like the moon shot, not even remotely close. Or even the space shuttle, I think. I don't know that one. I don't know, because it's not nearly as high as the International Space Station. I do know that because I did look at an infographic, so I'm not just making this up. I glanced at an infographic, and it had the different elevations off of the Earth, and the space station is way up there, and that's not yet where these little tourist flights are going. Yeah. But Branson did say that they're going to do a raffle. They're going to do a county fair raffle for who gets to go for free.
Oh, so like take one poor person to space.
That's how your average person gets to go. Yeah, that's how you democratize, is by having a raffle. Yeah, and then somebody's going to win it, and then they get to fly up into space. I'm guessing they're still going to vet that person pretty strongly. I'm guessing they're going to pay a lot of attention and vet whoever's going to be flying in their little space ride. But I did think their plane was really cool. If you haven't seen it, friends, it's like this double wide airplane with a rocket plane in the middle of it. So the airplane takes off and goes up really high. And then from that airplane, the one that has now the astronauts in it, because Branson now gets to be referred to as an astronaut, they shoot that rocket plane off of the back of the other airplane. I mean, it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
I thought that was that was a deep innovation that they had going right there.
Yeah, the little kid in me that loves spaceflight was all about that. I think every time someone goes into space, there's this question that comes up, and Geraldine raises it. Personally, I would prefer these billionaires invest in housing the homeless, feeding the hungry, ensuring voter freedom. There's this tension of like, couldn't this money be better spent elsewhere? And I think we saw that even, in going to the moon and going to the space station. Like, we're spending billions of dollars in space. Shouldn't we fix our problems here on Earth first? Yeah. I'm conflicted about that because I love space travel and the innovation that it drives, but I get it too. Like, any one of these billionaires could put a major dent in world hunger if they chose.
Yeah, you're right. But that's right.
What are your thoughts on that, Doug?
Yeah, I do have thoughts about it. I mean, I guess I've now been so impacted by this modern monetary theory conversation we've been having on Fridays, and just started reading or listening to the book, The Deficit Myth by Stephanie Kelton, who's one of the leading advocates for this. And it's been suggested by a number of people that have been in our conversations as kind of the popular book. Really worth the listen. Again, it's called the Deficit Myth, Stephanie Kelton. I'm listening to it on audio. She reads it. She's a delightful reader. It's breezy. It's easy to listen to. A little side note before I make comments about this. If you do listen to the book or read it and you think, Doug and Dan must have read that book before they started making all their comments. I just listened to it the other day, and we've done all these episodes on the modern monetary theory, which is the idea that the federal government can spend as much money as it needs to spend, only concern being inflation, not does it have enough money because we make our own money as the federal government. They call it a fiat currency, meaning it's not dependent on anything else other than the federal government choosing to make it. So we can spend as much as we want. We should worry about the impacts of having too much government spending, but not having enough money is not one of those. Deficit does not mean debt in that same way. It just means how much money went into the government or into the economy versus how much money came out through taxes and so on. So you listen to her, and she uses all the stuff that we talk about, like to the anecdote, Dan. It was a little spooky. The opening anecdote in the book is the line, it ain't what you don't know that gets you in trouble. It's what you know for sure that just ain't so. Opening line. I've got that in one of my books. She's got it in hers. And we've used that line talking about this over and over and over, how it's this mental mind shift. It's like the Galileo experience. I was using the quantum physics shift in thinking that you have to do. Then she goes as far, Dan, and I'm not kidding you. I almost had to pull my bike over, shake my ear pods out. She said, when I was a little girl, I used to watch, like a lot of you, Sesame Street. And one of the great bits on Sesame Street is one of these is not like the other. So which, and then she goes into a whole, which of these not like the other, just like we did on Friday. So we are right. So anyway, if you listen to the book, you're going to love it. It's going to change your thinking. So here's where my mind goes on that. We should not be thinking that the way we're going to solve the important issues of our world, the climate, poverty, inequality, enough money to have vote. We shouldn't be saying in this country, the way our country's going to function is get rich people to give us their money. The government should spend the money that needs to be spent to make these changes. The issue is not that we don't have the money to solve these problems. The issue is we don't want to solve these problems.
Yeah, we don't have the political will.
And when that's the case, if Branson said, hey, I want to turn over, I want to use $10 billion. I want to use $1 trillion over some number of time to make these changes. And the government doesn't want to invoke those changes in structural issues that cause poverty or in structural issues of voting or of racism or all the issues we face. It's not that we have a money problem. That's not where it comes from. Now, she says, we all know that politicians say all the time, the reason we can't solve this problem is because we don't have enough money. She makes this great point, which I think you may have made at some point, Dan, actually, where she says, we're actually in a bad place when we keep saying, let's tax rich people so we can pay for these things. It makes the rest of us feel like we're dependent on rich people. Mm-hmm. They are dependent on us. Her point is, we're not dependent on them. So I've really come to believe this. Not saying we shouldn't be taxing, not saying rich people shouldn't spend their money more smartly, but not to solve the big problems. The big problems, we need to keep pressuring our government to solve those problems, not asking rich people to solve those problems. Should rich people spend their money on things that bring about human flourishing and care? Yeah, and sciences are one of those places, it seems to me, and space is one of the places of science that we should be investing this. So anyway, that's kind of where my thinking is on this issue right now. But it's really helped me to be able to think about whose job is it, whose responsibility, whose bank account should be on the hook for solving our big financial problems, structural problems in this country. It's not the rich people. It's not even the middle class people. I mean, when she says this thing about taxes, man, I know we just talked about this Friday, so I'll try to hold up. I'm just pretty excited about this. But when she says this deal about you don't get taxed because the government needs your money. They don't need your money. In fact, they don't even use your money. The federal government doesn't use your money as spending. It uses your money to manage inflation by taking it out of the system, and then by incentivizing you to do certain things you might not otherwise want to do. That's what taxes are all about. I'll tell you, it is a mind bender.
Yeah.
The one, I haven't finished the book yet, but the weakness, and maybe it'll get solved in some future chapters. I'm still not convinced that this being the right way to think about monetary theory in the country, that taxes make any sense. The 5 or 6 reasons they give for why taxes are really important and we need to have them, I'm like, these are all BS. I don't buy it at all. We should stop taxing at the federal level. We should only be taxing at the state and the county and local levels. We should stop income taxes, federal taxes, totally and completely. We have plenty that accomplish the things the federal government's trying to use for taxes. So anyway, all of a sudden I sound like some crazy Tea Party guy. I'm not taxed enough already because I think we should all get to keep our money. I think we should rethink our tax code because it doesn't do anything. It just causes trouble. And doesn't accomplish anything. But anyway, my thoughts are half baked on that. So if you're going to send me a strongly worded tweet or email on that, that's okay.
Yeah, next time we have Fadl on, we should ask him about like why have federal taxes at all if they don't really do much.
Yeah, and I heard his response, and I get it. And they all and what's funny is all these people, Fadl was this way, and Stephanie Kelton is this way. She said, when I was doing my PhD work to become an economist, I was taught just to believe all of the assumptions that were taught to me. And then this idea came across my screen. It seemed like it was counter to all of those. And it really took a mind shift for me to get there. But I've made that shift. Here's how. And I want you to make the shift as well, right? That's the notion of the book. But it feels like that's only on the spending side. On the taxes side, it feels like it's still stuck in that old thinking. Why we need to have them. It doesn't feel like there's a revolution in the role of the taxes inside of the economic system. But
yeah.
Anyway, if you're into that at all, listen last Friday or a couple Fridays before that, or just search in our podcast and our live streams for the economic side. So that's sort of what I think about it. But anyway, in 6 days, 7 days, 8 days, something like that, Jeff Bezos, I think, is going to be up there, and then Elon Musk, and then it's not going to matter who got up there first, and it's going to be who got up there highest, and frankly, whose plane looks coolest. That's probably going to drive.
That's what I'm worried about. Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, on other things that some people find very interesting and other people couldn't care less about, England didn't win a soccer game and therefore didn't win a championship, which I know a lot of people really care about. And I think the same thing may have happened to Brazil, that Argentina beat Brazil over the weekend. And that was and Messi, who's a great player, apparently did some really good thing. So anyway,
hard.
In the world of footy, that happened. And on a larger, like, social cultural issue, racism inside of England has come out because people are saying things on social media about the English soccer players who are of African heritage that kick these penalty goals or these shootout goals at the end and didn't get it past the goalkeeper into the net. And so that's reason to show true colors, some people are saying, is what's happened here. And so it's a big problem. And as this quote says, speaking of England, the way we talk about race in this country, in England, is so poisonous, and you can't divorce that from the racism of the government. And so the very issues that are alive and well in the United States are alive and well in England, and they're coming out when it comes to sports, just as they do here. And I know that for a lot of people, football, soccer, footy is well outside of just sport. It's an identity structuring activity. Yeah. Get it? Yeah, good for them. I'm not one of those. But all the pressures of our society come down to bear on that.
Yeah, for sure.
Sad. But anyway, I don't know. Congratulations to Italy and congratulations to Argentina. Because, anytime one of the teams expected to win doesn't win and there's an outrage, somebody else did win. And,
and they're pretty excited about it.
Yeah. People in Italy. I mean, Italy's had a tough run the last, it's good that their teams goalkeeper stopped more goals than the other team's goalkeeper, so their country can feel good about themselves. I'm now mocking sports, so we should probably move on. Wimbledon also happened, I guess, and there was a Wimbledon champion. Tennis players too.
Apparently.
Apparently, yeah. The tennis players did well. So England had a lot going on this week. Wimbledon and their team almost won an important game. So that's going on. Hey, in much more important news, what's happening in Cuba and Haiti captures our attention a bit today. In Cuba, there's people out in the streets saying enough is enough. There's a boiling point that has been reached. Thousands of Cubans are protesting on the island, saying that, look, it's just not working, and they want to change. And I'll tell you, I mean, I love to see people expressing their voices, expressing their opinions, taking to the streets, saying their things. It's always best when that's done in ways that are for the collective good and not using violence and destruction and hatred. And it seems to be what's happening in Cuba. So that's all really great. And I hope Cuba changes a lot. It's a small island that's still really stuck in the 1950s argument about the economies of socialism, communism, and capitalism. Just feels like it needs to get over that hump and move into the modern era. I really hope that the Biden administration lifts the sanctions against Cuba that Trump put back on Cuba. The Obama administration had really loosened up restrictions into Cuba, and then Trump locked them back down again to try to, and it worked for him politically in Florida. And I really hope the Biden administration lifts all of that and just let the influx of people from the United States play out however it's going to help Cuba be moving its economy into the 21st century. But what I was surprised to see, Dan, was watching videos of this. I guess in my mind, Cuba was locked into the 1950s, like we talked about before we came on the air here, because I watch these movies about Cuba and they're always about rum and they're always about the revolution. And because I see Fidel Castro, even when he got older, he still kind of looked the same, in his army fatigues and all. I don't know. And I thought they don't have any new cars there because they're always driving those old cars around. And my friends that go there like put on Cuban hats and buy cigars, and it just all looked very, in my mind, having not been there, it just all looks so. And I'm just imagine it being so
like a romanticized 1950s.
Yeah. Like that Ernest Hemingway would still be hanging around there, this kind of thing. But when you watch these videos, you're like, wow, young and hip and happening, and there's a whole vibrant vibe going on in these protests. That was actually great to see, and I think it's illustrative of how people like me and you maybe just we only see what we can imagine seeing, right? That's sort of how
and
perception
what we're
works.
shown. Yeah.
So I hope great things happen there. Haiti, on the other hand, is really, again, in just such a difficult place. I mean, Haiti has just been in tumult for 100 years for all kinds of international reasons, all kinds of local Haiti reasons, and corruption. And I've been in Haiti just for a few short days after the earthquake back, I think, 2005. It was just unbelievably heartbreaking.
Yeah.
And the most wonderful people I have been around anywhere in the world. Haitians are fantastic people, lovely, beautiful, kind, just so great. And, in the Northern Hemisphere, it's the poorest country in the Northern Hemisphere.
That's right.
And it's teeny. It's only one half of an island. Like there's an island, one half of it is the Dominican Republic. And then just like every border in the world, just some false border put between that and Haiti. And it sort of separates out African descents from Spanish descendants. And you have these two different nations, the DR, people going to the DR, one side for vacations, and the other side of the island.
People are living on $3 a day. Yeah.
It's just really something, right?
Yeah.
So it's not like, well, the conditions there are setting all of this. It's a political, social set of conditions that the U.S. cannot seem to solve. I don't know if you know, but the Clintons, like way back in the 70s, like I think they honeymooned there in Haiti, and they made a personal commitment to Haiti. And when Clinton was president, Bill Clinton, the only one who ever was, shamefully, but when Bill Clinton was president, he was doing everything he could to make sure that Haiti was well supported. And they like all the international care for Haiti, and it still sits in this
Yeah.
place where the president was just assassinated. Hit squads are put together from around the world coming in, and normally you think like in other places where you have this kind of thing that someone's really fighting for all the resources. Like, what is it that the political structure is trying to do? The presidents of other nations, like the one we had in this country for the last 4 years, trying to loot and sort of grift off of the country. What are you getting out of Haiti? Like, nobody, no former presidents are like running off with millions or billions of dollars that they're looting from the place. So
Mm-hmm.
it is a little hard to understand how
Yeah.
painful and bad it is. And I know that the U.S. shouldn't be, the carekeeper, the caregiver of the world, and we can't take care of every nation. We're gonna take care of all 118 of them or whatever, but maybe Haiti, maybe Haiti and Cuba, maybe the two that are in the Caribbean and are really close, and there's some connection, and maybe we could just do a little something more there.
Yeah.
I don't know. It sure seems to me that we could have a much more robust, what they used to say back in the Bush years, in our own neighborhood. Remember that language they would
Yeah.
say? In our own neighborhood, maybe we could do a little more. So it sure
Yeah.
seems like something should be done about Haiti.
Yeah, definitely. I've been several times since that earthquake and still have friends. I was just talking to a friend, a pastor, last night who's there, and he's outside of the city where it's less tumultuous, but still, like, if it's not political upheaval, it's natural disasters. They've been hit by several hurricanes the last few years, and it's like they just can't catch a break. And the history is really fascinating because it was a French colony, and it was one of the very few successful slave revolts. So the enslaved people rose up, overthrew the masters, killed a bunch of them, and said, "No, we're our own country now," and then had to pay reparations basically to France because they stole themselves their property. So they've just been in debt to other countries for 100 years and can't catch a break. And then when international aid is poured in, like after the earthquake, there's corruption and the money disappears, and it's the really great and beautiful and friendly, caring people on the ground that suffer because of it.
Do you know how many people live in Haiti? Like, what is the size of that nation?
It's not very big. It's like a few million, something like that.
Yeah. That's what it seems like to me. One could look up. And when countries are small like this, first of all, it's really hard for small countries in our world. It's just incredibly difficult for, and this has been a problem in Haiti, of course, it's a problem in Dominican Republic, it's a problem all across Central America. The countries are so small, 5 million, 7 million, 3 million people. It's really hard to run everything you have to run for a full federalized government off of something the size of one of our small states in the United States. And it's just a very difficult reality for all of these small countries. And it seems like the United States really could be involved better there, but I don't really know. Like maybe it's been like, no, look, we have really tried, and there's internal issues inside of Haiti that are making it just so difficult for people to find a life that feels like it's flourishing.
Yeah.
But it's heartbreaking, and then the president's assassin, and then all the crazy that comes around it, and this story keeps unfolding. It just, for people that want to pursue common good, it's just got nothing to do with it. Whatever's happening in Haiti, it's so far from being good for anybody.
Yeah.
It's certainly not even common. It's barely even reaching the level of good. So Kelly is telling us 11.5 million people. That's difficult to run an entire, in the United States, we have 350 million. There's a billion people in China, like that in India. And, 100 million, other places 10, 5, 10, 11 million. Like, this is
Yeah.
really difficult to build an economy and to
Especially if
operate
you
all
don't
that you have to
have
operate.
oil or some tourist
Yeah.
industry that can run things. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, they can float. Yeah, and that's why, in Europe they went to the European Union and tried to create a sense of connection between all these nations so that they could carry one another and lift one another, and that was supposed to be a good idea, and that had a little trouble functioning.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, so a lot happened in there. Hey, a
Hmm.
little shift to some of the political news. I guess as a hybrid here, COVID numbers in states that are down talking the vaccine, less vaccines in these states, let's just say. And whether that's because political leaders are saying don't take the vaccine, or it's because individuals in those states are just choosing not to take the vaccines. Where the numbers of vaccines are low, the rates of infection are going up, and the Delta variant is going up, and hospitalizations are going up. This thing that we've all feared, that however this virus moves around the world, because it does seem to be moving like I don't know, like a headless snake or something. New York was a problem for a while, then other parts of the United States, and then, or first it was over in Italy, and then in New York, and around the United States, and then sort of jumps to other countries. And some countries did really well, like Australia was doing great for a long time, and now it's not, right? Um, and India was doing great for a while, and then
Yeah.
hit a real hard spot, and now it's coming back around. So there's something afoot, right? Like, maybe it's human behavior, maybe it's something else. But inside the United States, places where vaccinations are low, rates of infection are on the rise, and death rates are up, and per capita death rates seem to be up in those places. So vaccines are still the best way to go. I am increasingly surprised at the number of people in my life, though, who are non-vaxxers.
Yeah.
I don't know if you continue to run into people,
Hmm.
but I was just with a couple of long-term friends from childhood over the weekend, and both of them and their families are like, "Oh no, we're not getting it." Oh, come on! Oh, come on!
Yeah. At this point, I don't understand. Like we've had the biggest pool of quote test subjects. Millions and 100 million people have been fully vaccinated,
Yeah.
and so we know it's effective, and at this point it doesn't do anything weird to you. Like, there's very limited side effects. Um,
Yeah, well, these folks all have an anecdote. My
right.
father-in-law, this thing happened, and then that thing happened, and when you push on it too hard, it just, you can feel that it's that the anecdote can't uphold all the scrutiny. At least has been my experience with a lot of people who have their anecdotes for why they don't want
Hmm.
to do it. And you realize that, like, I took the vaccine for reasons that I can't fully explain. If someone really leaned in hard, I'd be like, because I just believe it works, and I believe it was best. I mean, ultimately, that's it, right? Like, I
Hmm.
didn't have a whole lot else. I reached a threshold of yes, and it was sufficient for me. And if you scrutinize me too deep, I'm going to sound like someone who's just a sherpa going along with what they say, right? And the same thing for people who don't. They reach a point where they're not going to do it, and that's no less defensible under harsh scrutiny than the person who says yes. So we want to tell ourselves we have, and the reasons are sufficient to us. And all the people I've talked to who aren't getting it, like, they're not currently convincible. Like, they're not
Yeah.
like, yeah, I don't know, I'm still a little iffy. What do you think? And if they're just like, oh no, I've decided I'm not. And one person said to me, um, look, if Donald Trump had won the election and wanted to use the vaccine to validate the power of his administration, would you have taken it? And it was an interesting question, because I wondered about that. I asked
Mm.
myself that very question, like, would I have trusted the vaccine had it been now being administered under the Trump administration? Part of me would have been really, really cautious. But he was really getting at this other question, which is, would you have offered yourself to his political victory, to his political gain,
Mm.
rather, by getting the vaccine and playing along the way he wants you? Or would you have resisted it because you don't want him to be a success? which is kind of what he was saying about his own sense of like,
Yeah.
Biden turned this into, hey, do what Joe Biden's asking because it's going to be good for all of us. And I kind of don't want to help that guy. And I don't know that it works anyway. And, you know, and I think about how opposed I was to to Donald Trump being the president of the United States. And I wonder, would I have convinced myself? Would I have, would I have done that? I don't know. I'm not I want to tell myself I'd go science first and politics later. I'm glad I wasn't faced with that. I you know,
Yeah. It's a reminder that for as much as we try to convince ourselves that we're rational creatures and we make decisions based on facts and information, a lot of it is just the narrative we find ourselves in and the voices we trust and the communities we want to belong to. Like a lot of it is about belonging, and so that's hard to break through. It's hard to to convince someone with facts when, you know, even on our best days, we're not entirely swayed by that.
Yeah, because facts are only sufficient as to their power in your life, right? There's a whole lot of facts that are kind of accepted as true, but don't carry a lot of weight.
Yeah.
And so a lot of people take these kind of facts and, you know, they'll set them aside and connected to all of this, because I almost always in these conversations have the set of factors inside these conversations are often very similar. And one of those is some version of both sidesism. I mean, it's just so rampant in our society, right? Where, you know, say like, look, I just think there's so much fear mongering that goes on in, you know, political speech about and they're like, oh, well, that happens on both sides, you know. MSNBC, CNN, no, they're no they're no better, they're no different than Fox News. It's or AON or Newsmax or any of the rest of it. They're just all the same. They're all that way. And that thing, you know, it shows up in what happened at the CPAC this week, where the Proud Boys and the 3%ers and the Oath Keepers were registered members, registered attendees at CPAC, and were walking around and were being well received by organizers and people at that thing. And, you know, the former governor of this state, a Republican named Tim Pawlenty, was on a news program this morning saying, yeah, but, you know, like you'd get that if you went to any like left leaning convention, you'd get a bunch of nutters and wacky people. So that, you know, that's not something we need to really be worried about. Yes, it is. Yeah, it is. If groups that are on a terrorist watch list from the federal government and were the organizing forces behind attacking the Capitol on the insurrection and are known for their violence are well accepted at a cultural political event tied to the Democratic Party, Democrats should be saying no, thank you.
Right.
Not well, I don't know. They got them on the other side too. What are you going to do?
What can you do?
What can you do? What's a guy to do? I mean, you got the Oath Keepers. What are you going to do? Not let them come in? I've been kicked out of those kinds of events, like a CPAC-like event, as somebody who was on the other political side trying to interview people. They have all the ability to say this is a private event, that you bought a ticket to a private event. We determine who's welcomed here and who's not. So this isn't the same as like, well, in street protests, you had all kinds of people doing. There's a huge difference between whoever shows up at a street protest and who shows up in a ballroom, registered, wearing a name tag, and sitting in a breakout session. Like you are demonstrating that they're part of these other groups because they want those other groups to be affiliated with this conservative political movement that CPAC is. All right. So just a mention or two on CPAC. When the former blogger and former failed president Donald Trump was speaking at CPAC, Fox News covered it because, you know, that's what they do. But then they put a disclaimer up on the screen when he would talk about COVID, or when he would talk about the election. They would put a disclaimer up saying what Donald Trump is saying right now doesn't fit, quote, voting system companies have denied the various allegations made by President Trump and his counsel regarding the 2020 election, the disclaimer read. So even Fox News is like, we're going to get sued again if we keep playing the president saying these things. What he is saying are defaming and are wrong on the facts. We're going to cover him. But even as Fox News, they're going to put up a disclaimer saying what he's saying is not true to the point that it can be supported in a court of law. That is just unbelievably stunning.
Yeah.
That it's just, and it used to be that, all the news agencies said, we have to cover him because he's the president. We have to. No, they're covering him because they want to. They've always covered him because they want to. They're covering him now because they want to. We're talking about him now because we want to, because I want to keep pointing out the fact that, he's leading an insurrectionist brand of republicanism. And if republicanism is ever going to be anything at all, it's going to have to live through a period of going fallow before it can, grow back some fresh produce in this field, because it's just totally off the hook. And so the conservatives had their big they had two annual conventions in the same year because they were really making up for time. It's like people that missed dessert the night before, so they're going to have two tomorrow. They had two of these conventions within weeks of each other because they just can't get enough. And this one was all about cancel culture, and so they had Donald Trump come in, and he's stirring up and then he was on Fox News rattling off things that were just late at night phone call back in like he used to when he was the president. And the fact that these groups now cover him because he might run again and he's the former president is just admit your addiction. You can't shake the guy. I mean, you
can't quit. You
can't quit the guy. Hey, on insurrectionist news, which I think is good every time we do a news roundup, to remind ourselves that people attack this country to try to stop a free and fair election.
Just
one of the
6
people
months ago,
that an article was done about is a man who, when he was 19, received the Purple Heart for a day of brutal violence that he had to protect people from in Afghanistan. And then he came home. His name is Joshua James, and he then came home, and like a lot of people, was suffering severely in his mental health state and the trauma that came from being in a war zone. This is like back in 2014 or 2007. So, a number of years ago, 14 years ago. Now he's, a middle-aged guy and joined the Oath Keepers and sort of a non-official military support group that's turned into violent insurrectionists. And then he was one of the guys leading the insurrection on January 6th. And it's sort of a big, long story that you can read in Time magazine about how this guy went from being a celebrated Purple Heart combat veteran to attacking the Capitol, beating police officers with flags, and trying to put physical fear into the people casting a vote to certify the election of this country. And apparently 10% of the people that have been arrested and charged with these crimes are people with military backgrounds. And this is a reality that we just have to deal with in this country, that it's a lot. And especially when it comes to the military, because we allow someone's military record to be cheered on in their life for the long term. So you could be in the military for 4 or 8 years, from the age 18 to 22 or 26, and then be out for 25 years, and people will still frame you as a veteran, even though in the 25 years you've been out longer than you were alive and and yet it still is all framed as those 4 or 8 or 12 years were the most significant parts of everything that ever made you. And there's a lot of people who become disillusioned with this country afterward, and the fact that you had a brave day and did the right thing in your own mind and in the in the mind of those who award you an award doesn't mean that you're somebody that's an honorable person till this day. And I think somebody who attacked the Capitol has proven themselves not to be. But how did someone go from that to this? It's documented over and over and over and over again.
Yeah. And, because we send these kids to do horrible things. Like even on a good day when you're protecting someone from violence or whatever, like you're receiving like moral, psychological injuries that might be with you for a lifetime. Like, we're damaging these kids that signed up for noble intentions, with the ideal of serving their country and making the world a better place, and then they get in and quickly realize it's not that. They get sent overseas and they're put in these impossible situations, and then they come back, like you said, disillusioned a lot of times, and don't have a sense of mission. And
I was even talking to a friend who's young and 25. His wife just had a little baby, so he's got a 6-month-old, and he's going to be stationed somewhere through the Navy, and it'll come out here in the next couple of weeks where he's going to go, and it'll be for 2 or 4 years. And there's a likelihood that that place could be somewhere that his wife and new baby can't go. So here, this young dad is going to be sent somewhere to do administrative work for the Navy in a place where his family could live thousands of miles from him.
Yeah.
And I was feeling particularly irritated about that. And I said, I guess it's just a reality that this government will pursue family separation at kind of a whole lot of levels, right?
Yeah.
Like that's what we think is what's good and important to do. That you would move someone to not be a parent of their child because you need them there versus over here. Like, you can't figure that out. You can't, I don't know, the whole thing around how we operate and use these people that are in our military.
Yeah.
And then advocate this other story. I guess it's no shock that, that people have a jaded view, or that the view of what America is, even if, because a lot of these people that move from that world then into the Oath Keepers and 3%ers and even Proud Boys, which I've met a number of Proud Boys who are ex-military, like, they have a view of their own heroism that is just really disturbing.
Yeah.
And I know that's not every Republican. I know that's not every Trump supporter, but it's part of the engine. Like, and this is the thing we're always having to argue in our society is, no matter what group you're part of, right? Whatever, if it's a chosen group or an assigned group in your life, there's some that are just kind of along as the body of the car. There's some that are the things inside the car, the baggage inside the car. Some are the wheels, some are the engine. And while someone would say, well, I think that these kind of Oath Keepers, 3%ers, Proud Boys, and so on, they're very small portion of the Republican, movement, the Republican voting movement. Well, they might be, but your engine is if you measure it, is a small portion of your car.
Yeah.
But it's what's driving the thing. And the QAnon and these groups are what's driving the Republican idea. So I was talking with a friend about this, trying to say, like, look, whatever you think the Republican Party has been, I don't think it is that anymore. This other thing is more, and to continue to say, but I really love, the cup holders and the steering wheel and the placement of the stereo and the armrest in this car, which are things that, go into buying a car. We should all, admit, like, most of us buy cars because of where the cup holders are, not because of what's in the engine. But ultimately, the engine is what drives the thing. And I just think that this whole wackadoodle world of Trumpism is what's driving the entire Republican Party. So sometimes you have to get rid of the car because the engine has gone bad, and it's heartbreaking because you love the look of it, and you love the story it tells, and you love the interior, and you love the cargo room to carry all your stuff. And but it's now being driven. It's now the thing that drives it is something different than it's ever been around before.
Yeah.
And that's what all of this stuff feels like to me. Like, it's just, and I get it because I'm opposed to these folks, and I think they're actually hazardous to the well-being of the planet and everyone who lives on it. And we need to welcome them as Americans and allow them to express themselves in the United States of America and protect their right to have their views. but they just shouldn't be running a major political party. And if you think they're not, Kevin McCarthy and Mitch McConnell will tell you, and Lindsey Graham will tell you otherwise. That they
The
believe
tail
they need
is wagging the dog for sure.
Hey, one last little bit. The former, or I guess maybe the current financial person in the Trump administration or in the Trump company, Weisselberg, is now no longer in charge of the Scottish golf course. So apparently in Scotland, if you're going to make a change in leadership, you have to fill out a form about that. So Alan Weisselberg was removed as the director and controller of the Trump International Golf Club Scotland as of last Thursday. So if you were worried for Alan Weisselberg and you thought, I wonder if Trump's going to stick with him. No, apparently not. They have decided that because he was indicted in the United States for crimes, for tax avoidance crimes, and for other fraud crimes in the United States, they've decided to not let him be someone who's still on record for being in charge of their golf club in Scotland. This is what it looks like when your friend's about to throw you under the bus and he says, let's go for a walk down to the curb. That's what's going on. And if you've seen the movie Patriot, or the TV show Patriot, what's about to happen to Alan Weisselberg could be already in your mind's eye if you know that fantastic TV show Patriot. That's someone's going to get pushed in front of a bus.
Yep.
That's I think what's coming. So I thought that was enlightening. The fact that, apparently they think he's in enough trouble that they should start removing his name from some of the places of power inside the organization.
Scrubbing his fingerprints from the crime scene.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh man. It's just what a world we live in.
Yeah.
Well, hey friends, if you're part of this common good conversation, glad to have you. Thanks for sticking around with us. Thanks for all the comments in the feed. Really great today. And if you listen only on the podcast, send us a note sometime. Let us know that you're listening. We know that you are. And every time I get one of those, just makes you feel a little bit more connected to all the listeners. So you can send that over to podcast@vocommongood.com. And of course, if there's topics or anything you'd like us to cover, you should send us a note on that. May or may not influence what we cover, but we'd really, really love to see it. No, we'd take that very, very, very seriously if you were to send us any suggestions like that. And if you want to join us on the Vote Common Good effort to pay attention to what's happening on the border, we call it the We the People Ride. We talk about this a lot. I know people are saying like, I don't want to ride a bike. I don't want to ride a bike that far. You don't have to ride a bike. In fact, we're going to do a number of events on the weekends between September 10th, which we'll be doing one September 10th and 11th in San Diego. And then we'll be doing one the next weekend, September 18th in Ajo, Arizona on the border with Mexico. Then we'll do one the next weekend on the 25th in Douglas, Arizona. And then we'll do one the next weekend up in El Paso and likewise. So a number of events that are designed for leaders, people of interest, common do-gooders of all kinds to experience what we're experiencing along the borders. You can come in for a day. You can come in for 2 days. You don't have to only be with us on the ride at all. In fact, you don't have to ride any of it if you don't want to. We'll do the riding for you. You're welcome to let us do that. So we'd love to have you come along. You can get signed up for all of this over at wethepeopleride.org if you're interested in an experience along the border and the people that are impacted by our border policies and by our immigration policies in this country, because they're not working well for anyone. The one thing we can all agree on is ain't nobody happy about the way we treat the border.
Yeah.
And some people want more of one direction. Some people want more of another, but no one's happy with it the way they are. So we know it's not going to last. We know it's not going to change, or we know it's not going to stay the same. It has to change. 100 years ago, we didn't treat the Rio Grande River as this hardened border that we do now. We didn't have it militarized. My guess is 100 years from now, we're not going to be treating the Rio Grande that way. So something's different right now than it was and than it's going to be. So let's start moving now to make those changes. Let's move now to make it so that it's closer to what we want it to be than what it is now. And frankly, we can't let the people who want to just militarize it be the only people showing up there and suggesting ways for this to go. Because there are some people that literally want to build a wall around the river. I mean, it's just so insane. But that's what they talk about, and they
Mm-hmm.
cheer it on, and they want. And some people even suggest that another country will pay for it. So there are options being put out there in the world, and if you want to provide some other ones, you should join us one of the days down along the border, so you can talk about it from your own perspective, from the people you've met and the people that can tell you what they believe should happen in the heart of all that. So, thanks for following along with us here, and we will we'll see you tomorrow, where it's going to be Politics Day around here. Because and they'll probably sneak in a little sports commentary and something about immigration as well. While the days are different, not really.
There's some common threads, yeah.
All right, Dan, you got anything else?
Nope. Common good morning to everybody.
Common good morning. I always get this like Irish, Lucky Charms accent when I say that. Like, common good morning to you. I don't know why. Like, I don't even have a decent like leprechaun accent, so I won't even try it. But did it ever feel that way to you when you say common good morning? Because I've been thinking we really need a good salutation for the end of these. A little thing you say, like there's one podcast radio show that I listen to, and they say, "Hey, take care of yourself, and if you're able, take care of someone else too." So nice.
That's
such
nice.
a nice little thing.
We should work on that.
Yeah. I'm afraid it'll turn into a common good morning to you.
Common good morning to you.
It's just bad. Yeah. All right. Well, good day.